Okay, this is, I need to do a little explaining about the links and the QR code here. Um, these slides were prepared for a physical meeting world, and I saw a lot of people furiously taking notes in my presentations, and so I've included a QR code so people can stand up and take a picture. And if you take a picture of the QR code, you get the entire slide deck. Same thing with the link down here at the bottom, and you'll get the slide deck information there. You won't have to go to the chat window. Let's see. Okay, I'm John Hauser. I'm from California, and I work with an access center here about 1 day a week. And I'm known as the archive guy because in 2009, I started what's known as the Community Media Archive. And I did that because Access Humboldt didn't have the money or the bandwidth to wind up providing our members with video on demand. And so I went around and researched things and partnered with the Internet Archive to host video on demand for access centers. And it's a place where the Community Media Archive is a place where access centers can host, share, and archive their video for free forever. And because I come from the IT side rather than just the audio video side, I wanted to solve it not only for Access Humboldt, but also for other access centers as well. I noticed that it was hard for access centers to get used to using a new interface, and archiving always came at the end of the project. So I started looking for a way of making distribution equal to archive. And so I did a study of the number of access centers using YouTube and Vimeo, and then I wound up creating a tool set and a workflow for automating those things. And so at this point, I've added over 960,000 videos from 900 collections to the Community Media Archive. And so this presentation is going to be talking, instead of trying to teach you how to archive your own video to yet another website, we're going to wind up talking about the metadata associated with video files. And the reason why I've done this shift is the idea is to get archiving to be as frictionless as possible. You've all got too much time. You've got not enough time. You've got too much to do. And nowadays, this is evident. It wasn't necessarily evident 11 years ago, but the future of video distribution is the internet. It's not cable TV. And we don't just have one distribution platform online. We've got, several to choose from. So the key is you need consistently tagged video to get ready for the future. And I've got a point here that I'll be coming back to over and over again, that metadata design and storage, I believe, should be vendor neutral. And I'll expand upon that as we go on. In this issue of making the transition, the central issue is that search engines work on text, not video, and access centers produce video. So centers need to wind up supplementing their video with text describing and categorizing their video. And just kind of level setting, if you're not used to the word metadata, I'm using it to mean just descriptive data about an item. It provides the context for the item, and it answers the basic questions: who, what, where, when, what's specific to this video rather than that video. And the reason why metadata matters in one word happens to be search. It's the key to discoverability in an online world. And it's that bridge between the old method of, the Sharpie scrawled on the DVD or the Sharpie label on the VHS tape in our cable TV playback servers, and new forms of internet video distribution. It's what feeds search engines and relevance ranking. And somebody Nathan, could you turn your, thank you, could you mute your mic? As we think about metadata and search, we really need to talk about the ways you're going to group your video. And we don't want to do that just from an access. It's important to go through this exercise and figure out how we think it, but then it makes sense to go and take the user perspective. And how will users find your video without a direct link? I see a lot of access centers spending money on website design, and they wind up locking up or embedded in that design are things like category, genre, series, producers. But the idea is that only works if people are coming in through your website portal. If they're coming in from some other way, that work that you've put into categorizing your video needs to be included in the metadata so it's searchable, so that as you wind up going to over-the-top platforms, you can use that as well. If we talk about organizing videos, of course, the standard one is by reverse date, where, by date where the newest video is first, and then older ones are down. And that's really, that doesn't work very well once you've got many videos. Nobody's gonna scroll more than a couple of screens, and depending on how complex your operation is, you may have multiple towns. People from one town certainly aren't interested in government meetings from one of your adjacent towns, but if you also do the county level, they're probably interested, everybody's probably interested in that higher level organization. Same thing with school districts. So you want to wind up thinking about segmenting your video by channel, by town, by type, genre, category, maybe by civic event. If you've got multiple schools, you may want to look at segmenting by school so that your relatives that are looking for the band concert don't have to go through the high school to get to the middle school events. And again, sport, both the upper Midwest and the Northeast, sports are maybe 30 to 40% of their programming. And somebody may only be interested in one sport. They don't want to have to scroll through all the sports in order to find the video that they're looking for. Series and producers are natural segmentations of video. And then there are others that are just kind of generic bucketing or categorizing your video, topic, subject, keyword tags that are possibilities here. And let's see if I can get back to my one over. Let me go 2 more slides, and then I'll take questions. I'll stop and I'll take some questions. I'm trying to give you a conceptual framework for when you wind up. I've seen a couple of vendor presentations, and everybody is acknowledging this new world that we have to play in of multiple video inputs, multiple internet inputs, multiple internet outputs. And so they all have metadata fields, but when you're thinking about doing a metadata design, you have to kind of think about this in two different ways: the design or the organizational level versus the data entry. And the web form, of course, is the view that you get to enter the metadata. But the focus is only on one video, so there's no consistency necessarily between the metadata that you entered, because if you're entering them in date order, you're entering, maybe a board of supervisors meeting, and then you've got a school event, and then you've got a religious service. So there's no follow over from one metadata element to the other when you're doing data entry in that order. The spreadsheet, the row column interface, if you use a spreadsheet for organizing your metadata, the focus is on your entire collection, and you wind up viewing many rows or videos at a time, and you can identify the inconsistencies between items very quickly. This is an example of the archives web form for uploading a single item to the Internet Archive. and you can see that it's got specific fields. Here's a spreadsheet interface, and it's basically what you make it. And I don't want to get people worried about, what metadata should I include. Just start out with the basics: title, description, runtime, a couple of subjects, and then build from there. And then at this point, I think I'll stop sharing and go back and take some, let's see, where can we get up there and do this. And let's stop sharing. Okay, now I can see the view again. Now let's, anybody have any questions at this point on the conceptual level or anything we've talked about at this point? Nope. Okay. I'm master of the obvious. Let me go back into my screen. This slide is something that I put together on the fly, and it's, you can tell I'm not a graphic artist, but this is kind of the hub and spoke model that I've been thinking of. And it's similar to many of the vendor diagrams that I've seen today, where you've got, except instead of their particular product in the center, your metadata store is in the center, and you've got, you've got smartphone apps, you've got Facebook, YouTube, your own website, over-the-top devices, and your playback server. And the point is, depending on how modern your equipment is, all of the playback server vendors are offering technology and services stacks that can do this kind of, if not in one box, within their family of products, or they're certainly willing to sell you something that will do this. But the idea is, you may want to wind up, if you don't have a new product, or you can't afford to wind up buying everything from a single vendor, you may want to wind up thinking about this hub and spoke model, where your metadata is kept separately outside of each of these things, and then you wind up mapping and wrapping as you go to the endpoints. The point would be, you would have some metadata elements that you would need for one of the endpoints you might not need for the others. It's absolutely certain that your metadata fields are going to be named differently between these things. So you are going to have to go through this process of mapping from your master spreadsheet or from your database, whatever you're using, and winding up picking out the elements that make sense to send to the endpoint. And then you're going to wind up wrapping those in whatever technical mumbo jumbo language. In the case of Apple TV, it's a version of XML. In Roku, it's their own proprietary scripting language, I think, these days. YouTube, you're probably going to be using YouTube Studio, unless you've got the bulk uploader up and working. So each of these things requires maybe different named metadata elements, and you need to wind up mapping and then wrapping them up. And once you kind of adopt this mental model, and once vendors move to this mental model, it's not that difficult to add an extra spoke on here. For instance, electronic program guides. What happens if you wind up, if a magic wand gets waved and cable companies become friends of PEG access, and they wind up saying HD channels for everyone, and you are on the electronic program guide? There are a lot of access centers that aren't ready for that, because they don't have the level of detail of metadata that people have come to expect from electronic program guides. So that's something that, that's an example of an endpoint that has perhaps different metadata requirements than some of your other endpoints. Does that make sense to people?
Yes.
Okay. Take that as a yes. Let's see, let's go back. Okay, so we talked about that. And then here we're going to wind up peeling down a level from the conceptual level into a little bit lower level. And these are specific metadata tips. Make the title unique. Include runtime. Include producer name. Use multiple subjects. Include a series tag. And expand acronyms for non-local viewers. And the three items that I've got here in purple, that runtime, producer name, and series, if you notice back up here on this web form interface, those aren't listed here. Now there is this more options, add additional metadata, but if it's not on your data entry form, you're not gonna think of it. And so that's something that's an example that in this spreadsheet idea, if you've got a column for runtime, then if the vendor doesn't auto-generate that, and it's certainly derivable from your video. I mean, your playback server vendor knows what your runtime is, but when you're transitioning to another, maybe an over-the-top platform or a smartphone app, you may need to transmit that to the app. So those are a producer name. That's going to be the bridge that takes you from producers wanting to maintain their own channels to saying, yes, I trust you as kind of the aggregator of the gatekeeper of your producer's work. And yes, I would much rather have my work included in your platform because I don't have the resources to come up with a smartphone app, an over-the-top app, that sort of thing. Expand acronyms. The value proposition for public access has long been local voices, local audience. But with the internet, you've now got a global audience. So there are people that they aren't familiar with the local acronyms. Add the long form of the acronym. A couple places in Tennessee use BOMA, which I hadn't run into before. Cincinnati has a commission called the GTEI Commission. Never seen that before. So those are two examples of things that someone from outside your community wouldn't know what they are. Avoid overloading acronyms. I found one access center that had both the Cable Advisory Commission and a Citizens Advisory Council using the same acronym. So it's not possible to sit there and programmatically expand an acronym when they're overloaded. There's something that I do with metadata, I call metadata makeovers in the video that I pull from 900 YouTube and Vimeo channels to put into the archive. So the before will have just a title and no subject tags. I'll take I'll add geographic and organizational tags. I'll add a series tag. My code goes through, and if you've got more than 5 videos with the same word fragments in the title, that becomes a series. Is it a government meeting? I actually add a tag for government meetings because that way we can do statistics on the percentage of government meetings per channel. Name of board and commission. This is especially important if you're a local franchise authority. Access Humboldt has 7 jurisdictions that we serve, and we cover normally, before pre-pandemic, we covered 19 boards and commission. So you want to break that out because somebody is going to be interested in one thing but not the other. I wind up adding a provenance tag to know where did I get it from YouTube or Vimeo, and I wind up adding year as a tag. I spent 13 years in a suit and tie in a corporate environment, and so I'm done with corporate best practices. So this idea, or corporate buzzwords, and best practices is BS. So I don't have any best practices for you, but I've got some pretty good practices. Include a producer element, include a series element, include runtime, subject. This reference to subject relates to the Internet Archive's user interface, and subject is one of the metadata attributes that you can have multiples of, and my template has 53 subject element tags. And the reason it has 53 is that, yes, some people actually use them all. you've got to have an ability to upload only locally produced video. So the first question is permission. You know, do you have everything on your playback server? Is it appropriate for uploading to an archive or over to the top or your smartphone apps? If you've got nationally produced things, or if you've got, in the example of you've downloaded a public domain science fiction film for your Friday night fright night, you probably don't want another copy of that going back up to the archive or to something else. And so it's one of those things that you need a flag that says only local origination, and the other thing is okay for web distribution or archiving. That's both a policy level thing for your organization and a tactical thing that you have to have a capability. The other thing that you need is you need a policy for takedown. For when you get takedown notices through any one of your things, you need to have a policy for how you deal with that. If you're doing this yourself, you'll need a prefix on your item identifiers. And the reason is what works for YouTube doesn't work for some of these other things. There are restrictions on the keys that you can have. And so by prefixing them, you'll wind up getting out of some of those problems. You want to include as much metadata as you have, especially things like producer name, because nobody can come up with producer name after the fact. In situations where you're coming up on a 30th or a 40th anniversary and you're uploading a lot of old content, there have been cases where access centers have no information about the thing other than the VHS, the label on the VHS tape. Well, what the proactive ones have done is they've held member engagement events where they wind up having a potluck, and then they wind up screening a bunch of these videos that they don't have any information for. And since these videos are already up on the Internet Archive, they introduce the members to the point of they can wind up working on these from home and adding some descriptive information. And they get, it's turned out to be a very successful thing. They started, in this one case, they started doing it quarterly, and members enjoyed it so much that it's now a monthly potluck. Or pre-COVID, it was a monthly potluck. Again, download and back up your metadata, keep it vendor neutral. The rule should be, ask your vendor if you put metadata into this system and if you edit metadata on this system, can you get it out of that system? That's something that working with the Internet Archive, that's an advantage that I have working with them, because they're open that way in a way that YouTube necessarily may not be. Okay, this is the last, second to last slide anyway, and we can take questions. Again, going back up to the high level, you're designing your metadata. Consider the viewer's need, the viewer's needs. Consider metadata from the collection perspective rather than the item level. Include data only you would know, producer. Use consistent naming and titles. You know, I wind up coming across these YouTube channels where most things will be normal mixed case, and then there'll be recurring items with all capitals in the title. And the issue there from capitalization is, again, if you're gonna wind up going from capitalization to mixed case, you're gonna screw up and decapitalize acronyms. So just, you know, just use, stick to either everything in uppercase or everything in mixed case. Just don't vary it. And of course, that first thing we talked about, make the title unique. Add dates or episode numbering to the titles. Here are a bunch of additional things. I also put them in the links section in the chat. I've got I don't know, maybe it's 6 pages on working with the Internet Archive. I've wound up downloading 900 YouTube and Vimeo collections and putting them into the Community Media Archive. I absolutely want you guys, for your collections, I want you to have an admin access to that collection. So I'm not the only one that can update that. So there are tips for how you wind up getting an admin interface. I've got a 2-page metadata cheat sheet that's very quick, that talks about certain metadata elements. Copy of these slides. Every presentation I've done, probably 30 of these presentations, I've got on the Community Media Archive wiki. The link is there. And then this documentary video from 2013. It's a little bit long in the tooth, but it introduces you to the people, the philosophy, and the kind of whole gestalt of the Internet Archive. And it's something that I recommend access centers show to their stakeholders, to their board, to their producers, to their volunteers, because it winds up, these guys share values, some of the same values we have as access centers, the Internet Archive shares. And so as your video is being backed up to the Internet Archive as a Plan C or a Plan D, it's important for your stakeholders to understand kind of who they are and where they're coming from. And of course, my email. I'll just mention that this work that I do, I call archiving as a service. And so it's the value proposition is, I'll take care of archiving your YouTube or Vimeo collection, and you will wind up using the time saved, since you don't now have to worry about archiving. You will use the time saved to improve your metadata. And that's the proposition. I don't charge for this work. I do fee-based metadata design and consulting with access centers, but I don't charge for this YouTube to archive project that I've started. And let's see, let's go back and, whoops, wrong mouse. Let's check in and see questions now.
Okay, very good, John. So if anyone has any questions, please unmute your mic and go ahead and ask the question, unless you want to do a chat feature.
Oh, everybody's good. Okay. How many of you know or have checked if you've got a collection in the Community Media Archive? Okay. I've got, I think from Wisconsin, I think there are 38 entries in the Community Media Archive at the collection level, and those can be either access centers or they can be government entities. Yeah, Jim, you had a question.
Unmuted. There wasn't a question. I was just saying that,
oh, okay.
Yeah, I know I've got stuff in the archive, but I don't know for sure if my organization.
Yeah, CAN TV has a collection. I don't know how current it is, but let me see what. Oops, I'm in Oshkosh's collection right now. Let me get back to this. Nope, I'm still in Oshkosh's collection. Okay, so let's go to collections. So at this point, we've got over 1 million videos in there. Some have been updated by individual access centers. The bulk of them have come from YouTube or Vimeo. So let's take out the movies, and then let's look for, I don't know if Chicago appears in the collection name or not for CAN TV. Yeah, Chicago Area Access Network. So you've got, yeah, okay, so you've got current stuff in there. It's continuing to add to things. You've got 4,086 items, and you've, whoops, let's click on the About Network. That number has been downloaded, or I'm sorry, viewed 289,602 times. And here's the breakdown by month. what I was telling you about the multiple, when I was talking about multiple subjects, the Internet Archive uses subject to wind up creating this facet here. So we're in CAN TV right now, and we're going to take a look at their subject, at their distribution by subjects. So disability is the top.
Tim?
Excuse me?
Can you share this screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. Man. Yes, I absolutely can. Whoop, 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 whoop. Okay, so share screen. Man, that's like talking to yourself.
Oh, thank
Okay, are you, whoops. So let's get back up here. So here's what I was saying, there are 4,086 items in your thing. It's recent. And then here's the about, whoops. In the about tab, you can see that here's the number of views by people and robots, discontinued view, total number of items, distribution. And then if we go back here, this left side here, I was talking about the facets. So here, because year is separated out as a separate facet, you can view the distribution of videos by year. You can view the top subjects here, and you can look at more of them by clicking on the more button. And so you can see disability, education, youth, art, music are the top items there. And let me put this away, get down there. And yeah, and then you wind up just seeing what collections they're part of. You can see that 180 items are listed as Spanish, 138 of them are listed as English. Obviously, you know, there's more, like probably 3,500 of those are English, and there may be more Spanish in there than are listed, because the language metadata element is a separate element.
Okay.
Anyway, so if you wind up taking a look at your collection or at any collection on the Internet Archive, here's the city of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Something just opened up. So these fields here are in the new interface they're called topics, but in the old interface they were called subjects. You can see the description field here. Oh, the thing I forgot to tell you, and I should have been talking about this entire time, is that YouTube winds up auto-generating captions in 106 different languages. And so automatically I pull English and Spanish by default. And then if an access center has a second, it has other communities, just let me know what other communities' language you want, and I'll pull those as well. For Access Humboldt, we wind up doing English, Spanish, Portuguese, Hmong, Hawaiian, and Chinese, simplified Mandarin. So there, obviously in the Twin Cities, there's a lot of interest in Somali language, and that's one of the YouTube auto-generated languages. And so down here, you'll wind up seeing there's videos that have captions will have this thing called web video text tracks. That's for the VTT files. And so here's the English language version of the auto-generated captions. And then this is the Spanish, the ES is the Spanish level. And if you're in the, let's see, oops, sorry. If you click the CC button, okay, that's with the English captions. And then if you click on the other language down here, and that's the ISO 2-digit language code, so it's a standard code. And then you get the Spanish caption showing. Okay, I'll stop sharing and I'll go back to ask about questions again. Any questions at this point? Okay.
I've got something real quick, John. So
Sure.
is the quality consistent does the Internet Archive, I guess, ingest it in one quality setting, or how's that done?
Quality for what?
For the
Quality for
video.
For the video, they take the original and then they derive a web viewable version. And what I do is I wind up having the original quality. I always save the original quality. So that's up on the Internet Archive, and they derive a lower quality web viewable, mostly for people with smartphone data plans, because at this point, 50% of their views are on a smartphone, and some of those people are bandwidth capped, and they don't want somebody with a, let's say you've got a city council meeting that's a 15 gig MPEG-2 file. You don't want that killing somebody's smartphone plan. So they have the original, but they download, and the way you would do that, let me see, I got 2 minutes left. So, or less than one, probably one. You come down here and you can see you've got an H.264, that's 520 megs. And then you've got this guy that's 409 megs. So this is the derived thing that they did that's showing up there. This is the original. And you would wind up going to show all, and then you would wind up clicking on the HDMOV file for the original. The way you can find out if that's the original or not is by, come on, click here. Whoop, one back. Okay, let's see. You come here, and in the show all, they've got a files XML file. And in the files XML, you see the source equals original for the HDMOV file. And then you see they also create an MP3 format as a derivative. And then they also create an MP4 file as a derivative. And that's their lower, that's a 420 by 853. And your original in this case was a 720 by 1280 file. So I hope that shows how they've got both sizes there.
We're going to run out of time in about 10 seconds.
Yep. Okay. I'm done.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, John.
Yeah. Thank you. I've got the contact information there, so if you want more information, just give me a call. Thank you.